So, for anyone who tunes into this later, there's no one viewing right now. But if you do have to watch this later, I first off struggled with what model to even open right now, because actually I'll save this for later, for when someone does actually tune in. I'll just work away for a while. So the issue that I had there, in case anyone missed it, was that the style that what I had this viewport set to before, or this scene set to before, was not showing any of the edges. As you can see, the sofa right here doesn't have any of the edges, only profiles. So if that's the case, I have to go into styles right here on the panel, open up styles, and then go into, there's all these different settings. So edge settings, face settings, background settings, watermark settings, and modeling settings. So what I'm looking at is edge settings, and you see right here profiles is turned on. If I turn it off, then I don't see any profiles or edges. But if I want to see edges and profiles, I could do that. And that's how I'm going to update this scene. Save as a new style. I usually just update the selected style because I don't know why the edges were off, and I don't really want the edges to be off, so anything that has the edges off, I don't want it to be that way. So I'm just gonna update that style. And another thing to remember is that profiles actually slow your modeling process down a little bit. I'm not really sure why, but if you have an extremely heavy model, if you turn off profiles, then that can help out. Profiles are just there to help show a little bit of depth, because they're making the lines between different objects darker than ones within the same object. You can also change the thickness of your edges. Some people think that SketchUp looks really clunky, but I think they probably just have their profiles set to something a little too heavy. I think the default might be like 3 or maybe 2. But I just set mine to 1 if I'm even using them. But in this case, actually, let's see what I've set this to. Oh, and I actually have 1 viewer. Isn't that exciting? That must be my first viewer. It might be Keith. Keith and Gloria, if you're listening, hello. Oh, and if you are listening, send a message. Hey Joanne, Keith here. Your volume could be a bit higher. Good to know. I'm going to put my microphone closer to my face, and hopefully that helps. It's a bit tricky to do. Okay. Maybe you can let me know if it's higher now. Maybe I could just talk louder. Anyway, hopefully my audio is a little louder now. Let me see if I can. Okay, anyway, so with this model, I struggled what to do on the live here, because I happen to be in between big projects and I just have like little things to work on. So the only SketchUp thing I'm actually working on right now is a layout for this one living room. And super basic layout. And you may notice that I have these 3D objects that when in plan view look like 2D. And they're made to look that way. But better control the output in your streaming software. Keith is just sending me notes about my volume, but it looks like I have it all the way up. Maybe I'll just put my microphone like on my lap, see if I can manage that. Okay, hopefully that's even better. Okay, so yeah, the thing about these symbols is that what I found in the past with SketchUp is that if you have like a flat symbol on top of a plane, then in certain views, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, but certain scenes, those 2D objects disappear. So I've created a catalog and I have it in, it's under my profile, but I also have it under my components so that I could just pull them up whenever I want. So I just have to go to my collections, and then I have all of these, I call them 2D, 3D objects. So if I want to pull out like a sofa that is 2D, 3D looking, I just pull it out of here, and that's how I can do some quick space planning without worrying about things getting messed up, like any rasterizing happening and two different flat objects on the same plane sometimes not showing. So that's how I go about that. And so I sort of settled on this plan before I started, so I figured a good thing to do was to go into layout with this. So when I'm going into layout, what I do is I send it to layout, and then it asks me if I want to save. Yes, I do. And and it'll take me to layout, and I already have some templates created. So it'll show me that in a second. Layout wasn't open before. It's just opening up now. But the templates I've set up with my own title block and to my own size. So I go to my templates here. And so I have one called Swisterski template February 28th. That's the last time I made it. I have a few other ones. I know this is the most current one because I just dated it to let me know. And the thing about the templates is that I know where to find them now to delete them, but every time I want to delete old ones, I have to relearn where to find this, so I just kind of stop deleting them and just put dates on them now. In any case, if I open up this template, then it'll have this viewport from that model there, and I just have to go to the scene that I want. So I just loaded on north elevation, and I open it up on plan. So I think the last template I made, I had it set to vector, so I actually generally work in raster, so I just am switching over the viewport type there. And I find that the best way to deal with dealing with viewports and how big to make them is to make them too big, and then to create a clipping mask, because and then you just select both objects and create the clipping mask. And then from now on, instead of making the viewport bigger or smaller, you can just go in and edit the clipping mask. Except in this case, you have to make sure that there's no fill in here. So I'm going to actually undo some of that. I'll redo that. And then with this clipping mask, you can see that the fill is on. That's why it's covering up the whole thing. But you can turn the fill off here in the shape style, and then it's just the outline. So then you go and select both and create clipping mask. And then when you want to edit this, you know what, I'm going to redo that again because my example is stupid. So this clipping mask should be smaller, because before I made it the exact same size as the viewport, which didn't really make sense. So let's say this clipping mask is bigger and the viewport is that size. So let's do it all over again. Create clipping mask. And now when you want to edit the clipping mask, you can just go in and edit the shape itself, and that means that you're not doing anything to the viewport itself, you're just changing this shape. And then you just have to click enter, and then you've got that. So sometimes viewports can be really slow when you're changing the shape or resizing the viewport itself. But if you're using the clipping mask, it makes it a lot quicker. So in this particular case, I seem to have two coffee tables, so it's easy to work with LayOut and SketchUp open on two separate screens, so you can go back and forth, but I'm using my other screen right now for the YouTube living, so I'm just going to flip back and forth between the two. So I'm glad this has happened, because this is one of those layout doozies. Because here I'm in the plan, I'm in the scene that is in the viewport, but there's no double coffee table here, but my scene seems to have a double coffee table. So the reason this is happening, I think, this often takes a lot of investigation. Sometimes not a lot, sometimes you spend way too much time on it. But in this particular case, I think probably what's happened is that my template has the base viewport set with some tags and styles turned on and off. So in this case, there's probably something. Well, let me show you an example. I think if I press reset here, then this double coffee table thing is going to go away. So let's take a look. Yes, so that now it looks like the viewport that was in SketchUp, or the scene that was in SketchUp. So let me undo that and then point out what I think the issue was there. I think, because I have two tags called, one is called furniture, and I use that for furniture objects that I will have in my renderings. And then for construction documents, I have one called furniture symbols. So you can see I have my tags are all over the place, so I haven't really done a good job in cleaning things up, but I often just model in a total disarray and then go back and do a lot of cleanup, which I'll have to do here. So I'm going to turn that back on, but that showed that both the coffee tables are on some other unidentified layer now. So let's see if I turn off the furniture layer. Okay, so these, I don't know what these coffee tables are on, but a quick way that I find works to help diagnose these sorts of things, and in fact, I don't have it in this model because this is an old model from a client from a few years ago when I was not quite a SketchUp savvy. But now that I'm a little better, the templates that I set up have, and I'll set one up now just to help you see how it works. I have one called all on and all off. So I'm going to add one, rename it, call it all on. And all on means that every single tag should be on in this. And so that seems to be the only one that was off in the working, so I'm going to update that. And then also any section cuts have to be off. Okay, and then I'm going to add another one and call this all off. And this is where I go in and I select all of my tags and I turn them off. Again, this is an old model, so things are going to act probably a little different than I'm used to. I'm just going to update. What's going on? I'm going to update. Oops. Okay, so what I should have on right now is my current one is untagged, so I just have to, in order to make untagged the current one, you have to click at the very end here until you see the little pencil, and then that means that's your current tag. So then I'm going to select everything again, turn it off, And what this helps me do is see what I have that is on untagged. So the only thing that I see in all off, and I'm going to actually zoom extend so I see everything. These are sort of part of my template. It's all of my tags. So the only thing really that's on here and hasn't been put onto a tag is this baseboard trim here. So I'm going to go in and put it onto trim, and so that goes away. So when I see all on, I now see that there's these 2 coffee tables, and one of them is on hardware, so obviously we don't want that, so I'm just going to delete that one. And I'll make sure that this is the right size. So that is the last one I drew, and it's on furniture symbol, which is correct, but it's some old tag that I used to have. So I follow the Mike Brightman method generally, and so all of the objects are on something called element and then the title itself. So here, for example, furniture symbols. So that now should be on furniture symbols, and I'm going to see what everything else is on. Okay, so that's on hardware for some reason. Some of these are on hardware. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my all off tag, and then I'm going to turn on just the one that's called hardware. And then, so the one that's called hardware, and also the location ground. Something's a bit funny here because I have this extra group that again, old file, messy, but now I can see these, so I can just grab them and I can put them onto furniture symbols. So if you ever have a model like this where there's a lot of extra tags and you want to clean things up, that's when it's good to have the all on and all off, so you can figure out what's where and rename things if you need to. And then once everything is on, you're confident that everything's on the right layer or on the right tag, then you can go and delete all the ones that you don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and do this because I'll be working with this file for like another few weeks and I just don't want it to give me a headache. So what I'm going to do is go all off, and then I'm going to go one by one and just start turning things on. So there's some old folder. The way that I used to do it, and actually some people still do it, including a Canvas app when they send you models based on your LiDAR scans, everything's divided into floors. So I used to have like furniture ground, furniture symbol ground, glass ground, hardware ground, and then I had everything identical, but it would say second, everything identical would say basement or third, and then have them in a folder and toggle that when I needed it. But that means that you have 3 times the amount of layers for everything, which is very annoying, and you don't need to do it that way. So I'm going to actually just delete this whole, I'm going to delete everything in here because I know that I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to delete tags. Once it stops spinning, delete tags. And I'm going to assign another tag to untag. So whatever was in here, whatever it contains will go on to untag now, and then I'll be able to go one by one and just sort them all out. Okay, so now all those tags have disappeared, and I'm going to just go in and delete that folder as well. And I have something called hidden. I have no idea what that's all about, so I'm going to delete that as well. I have one just called fridge. Sometimes you get these kind of tags because you brought in a component and they brought in all the tags or from the warehouse, and the warehouse components have their own tags, so I'm going to go and delete the ones that I think were based on that. And sometimes I'll just toggle them on and off to see if there's any need to keep them. So, I don't know. That one's, yeah, I'll get rid of that one because it shouldn't be, everything should either have an element or a condition or a location symbol in front of them or label in front of them. Okay, so now I'm going to go to all off, and these are all the things that are left over. So I know that these walls should be part of element walls. So I'm going to go put it on that and it'll disappear. That's why this is easy to go through and clean up this way, because once you put something on the right tag, then it disappears. So I'm going to take this is supposed to be a side table, so I'm going to go and put that on furniture symbols. And I have no idea what that is. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually, if you keep it selected and then go all on, then you can see what it's all about. So that was probably a symbol for maybe like the window or something, just so I could see it into. So that is what it was. So since that's a window element, I'm going to put it on windows. I'll go back to all off. What's still here? Okay, so there's a ceiling there. So I'm going to say, the way I categorize ceilings is the ceiling is either the floor of the level above or it's the roof. So that would actually be the floor of the second floor. And if I was doing more work on the second floor, then I would group it as with the walls and everything else as second floor, but I'm not really working on the second floor in this house. This is this weird box. It's sort of a vestige of the last plan that I did for their living room, so I actually can delete this, but I'm going to just keep it for now because I have to, well, it's a little complicated, not worth explaining, but I'm at least just going to reverse the faces, so I'm not seeing blue and it doesn't annoy me. And then all this stuff was part of the millwork from the living room that I previously designed at the back of their house. And these look like weird symbols here, but these represent, this is a V-ray light, and I should have that on V-ray, lighting V-ray. And then this is a background that I would have used for the outside of that window, and that I'm going to put on, I have one called V-ray backgrounds, or backgrounds V-ray. So that's going there, and then this one is walls. So I'll put it on the walls tag. And now when I go to all off, there's nothing there. So I know that everything has been categorized properly, or at least everything, there's nothing left on untagged. And so if I'm really being pretty fastidious about things, I will go to all on. Actually, no, I'll go to all off, and then I'll turn things on one by one just to make sure that everything is in the right place. So let me start from the top here. So I'm not, well, I'll go through them, but there wouldn't be anything on the third, on the ground. I'm going to leave the ground on because some things might be double tagged. So line work symbols. That looks like a line work symbol. I actually don't need that anymore, so I'm just going to take it out. There's the windows thing I just categorized. The walls all look good. Don't have any wall covering, don't have any upholstered. There's a bit of baseboard trim there. No tiles, no stone, no stairs. In fact, I could just, if there's nothing popping up, it makes sense to just go ahead and just keep selecting them. So I see that there's nothing on any of these tags here. So I just turn them all on, and then I'll go select them all and turn them all off at once. And then V-ray lighting is where it's supposed to be. I don't have any lighting symbols, no lighting, no hardware, no glass. And all the furniture symbols are where they need to be. So I'll just go ahead, turn those all off at once. There's a floor, that's the floor of the second floor. No fixtures, no electrical symbols. There's background V-ray. So it looks like everything is exactly where it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is go back to plan, save, and then when I go back to my viewport in layout, I'm going to have it on a shortcut, Control D for my document setup. References, click on the file that's in here. It should be red if it's been saved and not updated, and then I'll update. And then that should make this double thing go away here. And now it looks just as it should. So one thing I like to do on plans that are not furniture plans. On furniture plans, I will show the furniture darker, but if this was a different kind of plan, and I wanted the, like say it was just a partition plan or an electrical plan or something, and the furniture is kind of a secondary thing, and you want it to show but not be prominent, what I would do is go into the furniture symbols tag over here on the side. Let me just find it. I need to expand this so I can actually see. Furniture symbols, and then I could click on line and select line, and then make it a lighter color. I usually do some kind of a medium gray, and then change the point style to something pretty light, like 0.2. Okay, and then that turns out pretty light, and layout doesn't show it very well in like just on the screen, but when you do print it as a PDF, I'll just do, maybe I'll try print preview. I actually never do this, so maybe it wasn't the best idea. Okay, never mind. I'll just make an actual PDF. Oh no, it doesn't want to close. What have I done? Weird. Well, that's a lesson. Don't ever press print preview. How do I make this thing go away? Isn't that... Okay, well it decided to go away after clicking it a million times. Okay, so I'm going to export as a PDF, and I'll just save it on my desktop full of other junk. Call it test. And then I will, what I've discovered recently, I was trying to explain to my co-SLOPED founders that what I've discovered is that the best way to export things as PDFs is to actually make the resolution low and the JPEG compression high, and it actually exports pretty well as a small file. Because the issue that SketchUp has, or that layout has, is that it has a hard time exporting curved shapes. Yeah, depending on like what kind of zoom you have, you can see when I'm here it like doesn't look great, but then I zoom in and it looks much better. So these curved shapes look way better when the JPEG compression is high. They're still not perfect, there's a little bit of pixelation there, but you can see generally like the black lines, everything that's a straight line, even on low resolution, looks very good. So it's fine to keep it on a low resolution, high JPEG compression, because that just helps the curviness. And I've also noticed that if JPEG compression isn't high, then you see like bleeding around the curved lines, which isn't great. So that's my new little tip. And also the reason why I did this is to show how light the furniture is coming in. You see it's a light gray and a slightly lighter line weight versus the walls. So it's something you can do if you need. In this case, I don't actually want the furniture to be light, so I'm gonna undo that. I could have also just gone and just reset, but that would reset all of the line style changes that I wanted, so I don't really want to do that. So one thing that my template I noticed doesn't have, oh no, it does have it. Okay, so I've got page number set as the as an auto, what do you call it? As an auto text. So with the page number, whatever the number is here in the pages tray, that's what the number will be. So in this case, the last thing I must have set was a floor finishes plan, that's why I said FF, but I'm going to set it as ID. And then I want to change things like the address of the client. So I go to the address auto text, and I just write the address. It's a super simple design, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start dimensioning. And so one thing to mention is that you can have, I tend to see what the viewport size is. So in this case, I have it at 1/2 inch. And so when I start dimensioning, it normally goes to auto scale, but I don't actually like to do auto scale because sometimes the things it grips onto is something in layout and not necessarily in the SketchUp viewport, and it ends up scaling at 1:1, and sometimes you don't notice. So I actually just go in there manually and select the scale that I want these dimensions to be at. So it's a bit of a dangerous game in that sometimes you might have it at the wrong scale, so you do have to be mindful, but in both scenarios you kind of have to be mindful of, you know, whether the scale is going to change itself to 1:1 or whether it's going to be the last scale that you set it to, so you just have to keep that in mind. And I'm just going to double click to go along. And I'm just doing this kind of as an example. The real thing I actually need to know right now is what the width of these furniture pieces is. So I find that when you're dimensioning in layout, you got to get real close and personal on the lines themselves, and people are often looking for that green little thing, but I find that I'll just go along and find the red one if the green one isn't popping up. But the red one does mean that you're at the edge of the object in the model, so if the green one's not there, then I use the red one. So the thing with this particular model is that I needed to see what works in terms of sizes for this living room so that I can go and find these furniture pieces now. So now I can see that what works in this living room are these pieces, and what the size is 6'7½". So now I know I need to go source something like that or do some kind of a custom sofa for that size. And then this one is 8 foot, which is convenient, and 3'1". Coffee table is 4 feet by 2 feet. The side table, 2'5½". It's a square. And so that's pretty much that. If anyone watching has any questions, please let me know about layout or SketchUp or otherwise. It's basically what I need to do for this model I've pretty much done here, and my next step would be to go and start sourcing the furniture itself. And so there we have that. What else do I need to do on this model? So yeah, like I said, if there's ever a time where you feel like the dimension is not catching what you want it to catch, you really just have to get in there and make sure make sure that you're getting as close as you can. Which is annoying, but that's the case with a lot of things with layout. Even when you're doing like tags, you need to go in and yeah, just get close. And so this particular model is not actually using the tags that I like to use. So I do have a scrapbook that I can pull things from, but sometimes I find it easier just to keep things that I like on the side. So for example, here I'll go and I'll do a sample drop on this leader and then apply it to this one, because I like that style more. And here I'm just going to justify this to the left. Side table. people often don't realize is that you can adjust, say for example that this was called side table and it had a very long name. The way you can actually make this little text box smaller, it's not very intuitive because if you click into here you can't really make any adjustments. You have to click on the leader itself and then this bounding box shows up around the text and then you can adjust the text that way. So that helps rather than needing to space bar in between the lines that you think, and then if you need to edit then you need to get nitty and gritty about it, whereas this way is pretty user friendly. The only trick to know, and this is one of our quiz questions, is where exactly to click to be able to adjust the bounding box, but the answer is the leader itself. You have to double click on it. And so for this room, I think the next thing that I'm going to do is I probably should add some elevations because I might want to show, or the one thing that I probably need to do is place a light fixture, and I think I would want to place one on over the table here and then maybe a sconce on both of these walls. I'm not sure, but let me go in and try to do that. Okay, so now I have the walls. Okay, I usually have a scene called Working Ground, and Working Ground or Working Second or Working Basement, whatever I want to work on without having the ceiling on it, just so I can go into a bird's eye. I have it set to that. So this room only has one floor, so I just have the working ground. And I'll go into this view when I want to work on something like, say, putting a sconce in. A sconce or a lighting fixture. But actually in this case, I need to put on, no, never mind. I was going to say I need to put on a ceiling to put on the light fixture, but in this case, I don't have a second floor, so I don't really need the ceiling at all. I'm just going to take this out. I'm going to take this out too, because now I see it's not serving any purpose. I think it was at some point. So, what I'm going to do is use my my tape measure to set what I think is the comfortable height, let's say 5'6" for a sconce. And what I should have is, in my components, I should have some kind of a default like symbol for a sconce. But I don't necessarily. So right now, just for the sake of getting something in there that's centered, how I like to find my centers is really just with the guide. So I'm going to just place a little round thing there, make that a group, find the center there, and I have an extension where I can just make pipes out of things, so that's how I just make quick little cylinders. Let's say I want to make a pipe that way. You can use the follow along tool, but I just find this super convenient and quick. Especially because I have it set to a 1/2 inch diameter. So anything that I want to be a 1/2 inch, it just so happens in interior design, 1/2 inch is really helpful for a lot of objects that you're trying to make. And see here I can use the pipe thing too, but it was a bigger diameter and I wanted to do it by eye. So then I'll click on that and I'll just take them all and group them. And I also have a plugin for mirroring. I think the new version of SketchUp has something for that, but I use this plugin from the JS Power Bar. and I just really like this mirror tool, so that's the one I use, and then Control D to clear all the guides. I find that's a really handy shortcut to have. And because I might be doing, before I was just doing a plan of this, but I might end up doing elevations of this room, so I should complete this a bit. So I'm gonna go into the walls and click Control, what I have set as Control H, and that's to hide the rest of the model. And so I'm going to create the bottom wall, and I know that the windowsill is 30 inches high. Normally when I'm building walls from scratch, I'll build the full wall and then I'll punch the windows out later, but because I didn't do it this way back a few years ago, I'll just do it a different way now. The way that I use SketchUp now versus a few years ago is generally very different. So I need to create a window, so I'm going to create a quick window frame. The way I like to make really quick window frames is select all of these, hit copy, and then paste them in place, and then offset that. So let's say the window frame is 2 inches. And then I will copy that inner part for the glass later, group that. So I've just grouped the frame, and then now I'm going to paste in place the sheet that can be the glass. So then I moved it into the center, and then I'm going to offset it. For a push-pull, I just on both sides, and then group that together, and now group the frame and the glass together, so now I have a quick window assembly. Of course, I should probably make that translucent, so I will do that. Go to my... Normally if I'm doing a rendering out of a model, then I will use the V-Ray materials, but in this case, this is just for furniture layout, so I don't really need to go that far. So I'm just going to triple click it to select all. I'm doing a bit of spinning. Okay, so that should now be clear. And now we've got that window there. And so ultimately that's, I'm pretty much done working on this room for now. Like I said, I'm going to go and source a bunch of things that are these sizes, and then put some dimensions on them and product names. But that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'll stick around for just a few minutes and let me know. One thing I realize is that I don't have an area rug in here, so my quick interior design super expert way of doing this is just drawing a rectangle that just tucks under all of the seating but doesn't exceed it. It's tricky when you have some kind of a side table like that that gets in the way. I'm always debating what to do with that, but I think in this case I will probably pick a side table that can probably sit just off of here. Maybe something that's a bit smaller, or maybe something that's smaller and can sit somewhere like there. Have to be a pretty small side table. So I just use these blocks. The reason why I make them 3D is because it's a lot easier to, it looks better in 2D so you don't get the graphic issues, but then it's also easier to just space plan without them being like heavy furniture models. And then I extrude this by 0.25. See, this is another thing when I am modeling things for V-Ray and for rendering, I will need to make things certain thicknesses, and the furniture needs to be real objects, so they end up being on top of everything. So I'm just going to group that, and then back to my expert interior design stuff. Once I've just done a random shape that I think works, I look at the size that gets me. So in that case, it's 11'1" by almost 8 feet. So then I have to go see if that's actually something that exists in the world, which I think it's not quite, so I'll probably have to adjust the size of this rug a bit to make it work. But that's about the gist of it for now. Actually, while I have a few people on here, what I'm going to do is open up a more complex model and just take a peek at a few things on there and how generally my workflow works. So I'm going to go to one called, I'm going to start with the layout file itself. So this is a kitchen for a project, and this latest project is a good example of where my workflow is right now. And back the years ago when I was working on this house, I wasn't quite at the level that I am now. Actually, I need to open this like this. Okay, so this is a kitchen that I worked on recently. And I'll just flip through some of these pages. And in order to get the textures like this, I used my new extension called Material Modes, because I have rendering textures, but I also have drafting textures. So for example, this wood paneling has this kind of wood texture on it. And the marble has kind of a marbled look. Okay, so I'm going to open up the model from one of these viewports and then take you through it. Oops, I said update model reference. I meant I have to let it spin now. Okay, open with SketchUp. So bear with it all. It's a big file, but considering how much is in it, it's actually a pretty small size, which I can actually tell you for anyone that's curious. The way I have my files broken down is SketchUp, then I have layout, models, PDFs, and renderings. So, and then I call the main model that I'm working on the master model. So this one in particular is 32 megabytes. Okay, so here's the model. And one thing that may surprise people is that, and it would have surprised me a few years ago too if I saw it, is that I have about 1,000,001 scenes. And I used to think that was crazy, because how do you manage all of those scenes with such a slim little strip at the top, and then having to like flip through them forever like this. But the trick really is to get a tray with the scenes and just have it on the side here, so anytime you need to go to a scene that's much further down the line, you just can scroll down to it really quickly. And I have a very specific naming protocol for all of the scenes, so it's easy for me to flip to things. Like for example, everything on the second floor has its own room number. So I know that the hallway in the upstairs is called 201, and I know that and you get to know them obviously as you are working on the project, but I know that the master bedroom is 202, the ensuite is 203, 204. Anyway, so when I need to go to a specific room, like let's say for example, I want to go into this walk-in closet and all the scenes that are in there, I go to 204 North walk-in closet, so that's the cut through of that. And then I have all 4 of them. I have I have 1 north, 2 north, 1 with the island, 1 without, 1 east, 2 east, west, west, or I guess south. And my naming protocols are based on the directions. So I do to help keep them in order, I do the room number, then the direction, and I put a 1 in front of it so that they're all in order. So north is 1, so 1 north, 2 east, 3 south, 4 west. And that just keeps all this in order. So for every single room, I'll go back to the working ground. So for example, every room on this ground floor has its own set, within this model, has its own set of 4 or more elevations. So let's say for example, the study. Hold on, I'm seeing a question from Alan Nisbet now. For layout, do you use a separate layer for notation and dimensions, or do you combine them all on one layer with a view shown? Separate layer for notation. Yeah, I do use a separate one. I at least try to. But what happens is like you see here, I have my layers in layout. And so I do have dimensions and notes, page notes, room notes, title block, clipping mask, viewport, and for the most part, all of these are correct. The ones I just fudge or get wrong sometimes are the dimensions and page notes, because I just start going and I don't really pay attention what layer I'm on. Like let's say for example this is on the right thing. But I guess we'll know if I turn these on and off. If I just turned off the dimensions and none of the dimensions turned off. So it doesn't really bother me unless there's something I really need to be editing and I need them out of the way. And if that's the case, then I just select them all and then I move to layer dimensions. And like it's rare that I actually need them to be separate, but when I do, then I'll bunch them all together, put them on their proper layer, and go from there. Hopefully that answers your question. So back to this model here. For example, if I wanted to look at everything in the study, I know that the study's on the ground floor. It's one of the first rooms, so I know it's going to be, it's 103, so let's say I want to see the north elevation of the study. I go to 103, 1 north study. And so I have that elevation there. If that's not the one that I want, I go to any one of these. And then I have pretty much the same thing going on for all parts. Like for example, the finished floor scene, finished floor ground, finished floor second, power and communication for the basement, ground second, and then the RCP for the basement, ground second. And the way I do my RCP is the upside down way, where I do actually put them on the ceiling. So this view is looking straight up at the ceiling. And for me it's important to do that because I often have elements in the ceiling that I need to show. Like for example, in this particular model there's 2 skylights. So those need to show, and I also want to show things like headers and doors or millwork that's touching the ceiling. I need to see that. So I just put the symbols, I usually hover them, either put them right on the ceiling or hover them like an inch or 2 below. And then in layout, they end up getting, just the viewport gets flipped so that it looks like it's the right way around. And then the last few types of plans that I need, this is obviously specific to interior design, not everyone needs all of these. But then I just have and this one I seem to have messed up what this is on, so my My power and communications. My electrical is on in my regular plan. That's alright, I can fix that another time. I've actually already turned this into a whole design package and printed it, and it's off to the builders, so I don't necessarily need to worry about it right now. Anyway. And that is how my workflow operates. And if you're wondering about all these scenes, that means I have to have like many sections. I do have many sections, but they follow the exact same naming protocol as the rooms themselves. So for example, this section is called I don't know why it's called that, but in any case, it is the name of the section itself. I don't know why the symbol is that, but the name of the section itself is the exact same as the scene. And people get afraid to do a lot of sections in their model because maybe they think it's going to make it messy or something, or it's going to make it complicated, but I literally never see the sections, because in order, like if you did see all the sections, you would have to turn them on for some reason. But the only section that's ever on for me is the one that's on in whatever scene that I'm in. So they don't really ever get confused. They have a very specific naming protocol. They're only on when they're supposed to be. And I don't need to split my model up into many different files. I keep mostly all organic objects out of this model, and I just have a separate one for rendering. And speaking of which, I have everything in draft mode right now, and what I mean by that is that I have material modes as a plugin, which is something I was part of developing. And so when I'm doing construction documentation, I put everything to draft mode, and this is one that you just custom create whatever you want. I've called mine draft mode, but it's basically an alternate state for materials. And when I'm doing construction docs, I'll switch it over and save it in draft mode. But if I'm working on presentation stuff and when I'm actually with the clients, it's easier for them to make sense of things in when things are actually the materials that they recognize. So when I'm with clients, we'll be looking at this model together so they understand, the cabinets are green, the stuff is wood, the floor is oak, that sort of thing. And then I'll use this model, put it into a different file when I'm rendering, because that's when I populate it with like really heavy organic shapes like furniture and lighting fixtures. Well, not lighting fixtures, I actually have those in here. The lighting fixtures are the heaviest organic things that I have in this particular model. But anyways, that is generally how it works. And if I wanted to create an alternate set of materials, like say an option 2, like you want to see this as blue and you want to see the wood as, I don't know, like a red millwork, and just basically change all of this, you could just create a separate column here in material modes, and then set a bunch of new materials, and then just have that as your alternate mode. So if you're with the client, you can just switch right over. But anyhow, that pretty much concludes this stream. Again, if you guys have any questions, I'll stick around just for another minute or so. But I will be doing another one next Wednesday, so if you have any questions or you want to watch me working on something else, today I actually didn't really have that much to work on. It's a very rare time where I'm usually working on like 4 models and just overwhelmed with SketchUp and LayOut work, but for some reason things are quiet now, and all I had to work on was a simple furniture layout. But next week you might see me kind of going into the weeds on, like, deep into a model and modeling some complex stuff. But I haven't gotten any more questions for now, so thanks for tuning in, and see you next week.